Absolutely. So again, thank you so much for joining, everyone. And I will try to give you as many insights as possible. My name is Walczykowska. I'm based in Berlin, and I am freelancer, freelance creative operations manager and project manager for 2 years now. I'm originally from Warsaw, from Poland. And I will move to the next slide. So what we are going to talk about today is actually my little introduction. So you can basically understand where I'm coming from, what is my background, what were my experiences, which is something I absolutely love to share because this is something I'm always very curious about when it comes to also other professionals. It often seems like there is a lot of mystery around like how did people land certain jobs or meetings or connections, and I love sharing these stories because I think that in the end they are all very both random and normal and natural, and there is no mystery about it. We're also going to talk about some basic rules about setting up your daily rates as a freelancer. And this is something that is very much related to the market you're in, but actually not only. I mean, we work in a very online environment, and our industry is not really closed by any borders. And I'm the best example of this. I'm based in Germany, but I don't really have any German clients and neither Polish clients. So actually, it's always very, very mixed. And we're also going to talk about some good practices, and this will involve also my last point, so being your best supporter, so some kind of like advices from me after many, many years in the corporation of how to like take care of yourself when you are working in a very stressed environment, because our work is very stressful very often. So I'm going to move on. So who am I? So again, I worked for TV honor production for many years, but first I studied movie and theater production in film school in Łódź. For a moment after this, I was freelancing as a production manager for TV commercials. And finally, after a few years, I landed a job in the company that used to be called MTV Networks, then Viacom International Media Networks. Now it's called Paramount. And with this company, I went through like a range of different positions and jobs. I was changing channels. It was always in creative and always in organization or project management. And also with this company, I moved to Germany. So my last position in Paramount was creative operations manager for a cluster. I was supporting creative teams for kids channels in Europe, Africa, and Asia. And this was the best job I ever had. It was incredible. It was super interesting. I was working with professionals across these 3 continents who had so many ideas that were different, and they were all really great ideas. But we were learning how to really align processes together, how to decide and implement one project management system, and how to make it possible for everyone to gain from that, and also gain transparency and connect with their colleagues in other countries. And from the company perspective, it was, of course, all about like money saving as well and transparency for the management. So it was a huge, huge project. It took many months of preparation just to even start, but it was very interesting, and it actually led me later to what I'm doing right now. Now, since 2022, I'm self-employed. I work as an external consultant for media corporations. I'm also a creative project manager, and I'm also a creative ops manager, which means that sometimes clients like media corporations ask me to support them in creating some topics related to their structure and workflow, but also software-related topics. So we discuss which are the best tools for them and how can they use these tools, which for me is like the key question, because of course there are so many tools available on the market, and we have to learn what will fit best to which company, to which team, and also what are the best practices of using them. And after I help to implement these tools, we also train teams, help with maintenance and onboarding new users. Plus, of course, because all these softwares are still developing, this is a part of my kind of non-paid job, is that I'm constantly looking at it and learning myself. I'm also in touch with partners of these big companies to kind of learn what is coming up, what new features are coming up, so it can be also offered to my clients. And one last thing is actually why I'm even here, is that I, as a part of, I'm on the Juno platform myself as a freelancer, and I thought it would be really cool if I also started working with professionals like me, who, for example, are already experienced or junior, but they didn't necessarily have a chance to learn any project management software yet, because it's simply sometimes our reality. We work for clients that use Excels, and how can you learn it then? Like, it's very hard to do it on your own when you don't have any reference. So I thought I would offer something like this, and so far there was no one interested, which is okay. I mean, we will see in the future, but I'm very open, and I also just wanted to add it here that if someone would be interested in something like this, or even some kind of like consulting, then I'm very interested in that. I love working with other freelance professionals. I think we are super brave and amazing, so reach out. Okay, moving forward. So starting with a little bit of like a light tone, this is an amazing copywriter from the UK, Amy, and this is my big comment on like what is going on the market right now. It's hard, and I hope no one is taking it personally, like that it's their like issue, or they are not prepared, or they are applying in the wrong way. It's just crazy right now, especially in the UK. I can really see that, even though I'm not based there, but I know a lot of UK professionals. What for me is most unbelievable is that companies expect freelancers to take, first of all, low rates, but then still come to the office, which of course causes additional cost and time waste. So I really hope that for everyone who is based in the UK, I hope it will change for you guys. Freelancers are supposed to be their own bosses and work from their own offices and from wherever they feel they want to work from. And I'm not going to be really talking about applying techniques. It's a huge topic itself, and I'm not an expert on this, but I will try to concentrate on things that really work in our industry where circumstances are normal. And right now, as we are hitting the crisis, it is a little bit wild. And my advice, and what I will be talking about a little bit, is trying new ideas, trying to open new door whenever possible, and just being very open to also random solutions and random networking ideas, something that will basically fit your character, your mood, and however you feel in certain moment, because of course we are also sometimes just burned out and tired. And I'm definitely the best example of someone who very often worked very hard and sometimes succeeded, but very often also failed and ended up somewhere completely different, and it was in the end also a great adventure. So starting with what I consider the main pillars of creative project management: communication, organization, decision-making, and logical thinking, and creative tech and production processes know-how. I am not a certified project manager. I have gained all my experience at work, and I honestly see these 3 points as something that is connecting everything else. Starting from communication, this is something that each of us has individually, and we are all original, and we shouldn't really change it. Of course, we have to sometimes adapt a little bit our communication style, like maybe not swearing or something like this, but being yourself and keeping your original flow. If you're super lively or super shy or very nerdy, you should really keep this, because it might be that this is just exactly the right combination for the team you're working with. So you shouldn't adapt to some management communication style that you see on LinkedIn or something like this. And our unique communication style really comes out of our experiences and ideas. So Try in the same time to listen to everyone you work with, try to be empathetic, and when possible, of course, you're working with different characters, try not to judge people when they have like one bad day. So be kind. This is number one for me. Like, we have to be diplomatic. We are in the middle of a storm always. We have to be kind, and we have to also know when to be strong. The second point about organization, decision-making, and logical thinking. So obviously, I think organization and logical thinking are like self-explanatory. We have to be very organized because very often, especially as freelancers, we are hired to clean the mess. And before the project even starts, we are the ones who receive this messy briefing or briefing that is missing everything. And we are not designers. We are not going to be like, no, this is not something I can work with. We actually are hired there to help the client to clean this briefing, to make it understandable for the rest of the team, for the vendors, and also for client themselves. Maybe they don't know necessarily what they need in the beginning, and they kind of want to try different ideas. And then the project manager is someone who can, first of all, help them to recognize what are these options they want to consider. But secondly, maybe also suggest which option is good from the budget perspective or the goal perspective. So we have to also know how to ask these questions and keep the timeline very strictly with the client as well. And this decision-making part is really the key here, because very often we are surrounded by people who are afraid to take decisions, even though they are supposed to. And sometimes being a little bit strong and saying like, listen, we have been going through these ideas for like 5 weeks now. Let's decide on this. Like, all of these ideas are good. Let's just make a decision, because then we can still maintain the budget, keep the timeline, and just deliver the final product. And the third point is something that not every project manager agrees with. This is my personal, very important part. I think we should be tech savvy, and I think we should be involved in the production processes. We should know how stuff works, how much time it takes, how to judge it from the budget perspective. But one thing that I really absolutely love, and I was doing it all my work in Paramount, and also right now, even today, before our meeting, is that project managers can very often help to speed up the approval process if they prepare mockups. And this is something that I usually do when client has a lot of feedback. And before I send this 10th version of feedback to the designer or editor, I would rather make a mockup myself really fast, either in Premiere if it's a video, or in Photoshop, or in whatever. But basically just give them an opportunity to see this like dirty draft before they actually want to pay for it to be done by the editor or designer. And it saves us so much time. This is also something I will have later in my presentation as one of the kind of good practices. I can really recommend it to everyone, that if you have a chance to be like proactive, and if you know how to edit, and if you know how to use Photoshop, even if you're not a designer or photographer, this will gain you a lot of time, and it will save you a lot of stress. Yes, and the last thing about creative tech is, of course, creative project management tools. So right now we have so many of them on the market. One of them is Monday.com or ClickUp or Asana, many others. And I have to say that if you guys have never had a chance to work with any of them, it would really be a great investment even to check out these free tutorials that are available for every of these programs. It's something that will give you a little bit of kind of idea of what is going on there. But if you had a chance to work with one or more of them, you are already like many steps ahead, because most of these programs work very similarly. They have very similar features. And once you learned one really well, you can really fast transition into another one. This is not the same transition as between Excel and Monday.com. This is really going to take like a few days and you're in. And this is not going to go away. We will only use these programs more and more, and we will be expected to cover much bigger campaigns, much bigger projects. So it is right now a must really to try to get into at least one of these programs. Okay, so a little bit about like working as an external project manager, a little bit more than what I just said. And I only want to say as a little break that I know I'm very talkative. So if you have any questions in the meantime, please feel free to just say something or write it in the chat. And Eva, if you can let me know if someone wrote something on the chat, then I will try to answer immediately. So first thing is networking. And this is something I've been thinking about very long because I myself am a mix of extrovert with some anxieties when it comes to big gatherings. So I know that we all struggle with networking, and for many people, networking seems to be only this thing that you go for an event and you're supposed to meet people and give them your business cards and do these awkward talks. I never did it. I would never want to do it. This is an absolute nightmare for me. And in the same time, I do connect easily with people when I meet them like one-on-one. So we all have our own character. And I want to say that in networking, especially using platforms like LinkedIn, I usually see this tendency that it's not really a network, but it's rather like a spider. And this is my beautiful drawing that you see above the point 1. So you have this left image of a spider, which basically means that you have this kind of strong influencer person and everyone is connecting to this person. So this person is sort of only like giving, or the other people are eating from this person's like communication and connections and stuff. This is not networking. This is honestly like a very passive strategy, and it could be the very first step if you feel like you don't feel like connecting with people so much, it's not your thing. So I would say this is the very basic. And when you want to move your game forward a little bit, you don't necessarily have to go out to events and again meet random people with your business cards and stuff. What you can basically start doing immediately, and this is for any kind of character, I believe, is we all know other freelancers. We all have some kind of network of professionals that we know either from studies or even from schools or from work. And when you are looking for gigs and you see an offer that is not necessarily your fit, recommend someone for it or send this offer to your fellow freelancer. This is the very least you can do to start giving as well in this networking game. And then it's becoming this image on the right, it's becoming an exchange, which is really what networking is about, that you are like proactively supporting your network while you're yourself looking for stuff. And the more people do it, the more you are also going to receive some offers or recommendations. And honestly, it might even be that you recommend one person and this person doesn't give back to you, but just recommend someone else further. This is, like, you never know where recommendations will come from. And it's always worth to keep in mind that all of us as professionals, even if they are these heads of spiders and they are like popular and they have a lot of connections, everyone would be thankful for a lead and a gig, everyone. So please try to think about it like this and try to openly like search and share what you find if it's not relevant for you or if it's a different location or something like this. Plus, of course, when you have a client and they are working for someone, think about the people you can recommend. This is always a really great, great foot in the door. Then the second point, be vocal about what you do. So this is something I learned myself after many years. As you can see, I don't have any problems with talking, but at work, I was a little bit of like a lonely island. I was covering small department work, and I was working on my own, and not even my boss really knew which countries I cover and stuff like this, because I was just doing my job. Everybody was happy, everything was on budget, and I was then leaving and doing my other things. And only after a few years, I had a new manager who basically told me that I have to start being more vocal, because no one knows me in the company, no one knows what I do, which means that I will always be sort of like stuck in the same place, which is not necessarily what anyone wants. So it was a little bit awkward in the beginning, because I kind of thought that everything I do is obvious and everybody understands it, and it's also not such a big deal. But it was a huge game changer. So if you have any connections with other freelancers, or again, maybe you're meeting people who are in media industry and maybe they could be your client or not, you don't know, be very vocal about what you do. Be vocal about what does it mean that you're a project manager. Not everybody knows that. What does it mean that you are for example, an expert on a project management system? What is this? What is this system? Talk about it, obviously maybe not all the time, but in relevant moments, and be your own sort of walking promotion as much as you feel comfortable with it. The more you talk about it, the more people will recognize you as an expert in this field. And I mean, I know that we have like a mixed crowd today, but this is especially a big call out to ladies. Please talk about what you do and be vocal about it and speak up. So the next point, maintenance and growth. So of course, as freelancers, we work as much as we can. We can't always maintain the balance that we want in this particular moment, because if the client needs us now, we know that this is this week and next week maybe there is nothing. So we usually agree to this. So this was something I want to say. If you land a project or like a collaboration that you kind of see that it will be going on for some time and it's actually happening, sometimes we have this, like we are becoming a part of this external team for a few months, for example, then definitely also plan your holidays in this period, because if you never plan your holidays and the collaboration goes well, you will sort of never have a good moment to have your free time. And it might seem like the client will, I don't know, not need you anymore, but obviously it's not true. If you're doing a good job, and obviously if the client is normal, then nothing will happen and you will come back and you will keep working and everybody will be happy. But no one will think about your holidays if it's not you, because they don't have you in their HR structure, and they don't have to think about like, oh, did, I don't know, Anna take holidays this year? So you have to maintain this balance yourself. And in the same time, when it comes to like growth, if you work for one client for a very long time, this is blocking your development a little bit, because you work in one structure and you work with the same group of people usually and using similar tools, like the same tools all the time. So if you have a great client like this, then obviously keep them, but try in your own spare time to develop and learn something new and see what's up there in the market. This is extremely important. Like, don't land on this one or two big clients forever, because you actually end up in a situation that you're pushing yourself out of the market, not knowing what's happening, what are the novelties, technological novelties, etc. And also simply you don't get new connections in other companies. So should one of your clients go down, you are literally looking for a job, like an employed person. So always try to still stay a little bit active as much as possible, of course, within your time. The next point is challenge the status quo. So this is my favorite. I love it. This is what gave me so much satisfaction in my work, and it still does. And this is about basically challenging all existing blocks and or fences or whatever you can call it. So If you are working for a client that is a corporation or agency and they are on the market for some time, they usually have certain procedures and structures that are like stiff. And you will start working there and you will notice that the workflow you're like dealing with has 20 steps when it could easily be 10 or 5. And you start asking why it is done like this, and sometimes people will not be able to explain the reasoning behind it. They will just say like, this is just how it is. And of course, as freelancers, we can't always immediately be like, okay, let's change it. But if you're there for quite some time and you're becoming like this trusted expert, this is something you can definitely try to see, if this is possible to change. And I will give you one example. So when I was still working in a corporation, we had this procedure of filling out some documents with music rights. And this was really painful for everyone. No one wanted to do it. And the whole cluster had to do it. Every team had to do their own music rights documents. And it was always very painful. Some people were forgetting it. The legal department was angry at us, etc. And the only reason that everyone had to do it was that the US Central Hub didn't use the same program for music rights as the rest of the world. And for many years, we were working like this. Everybody was annoyed about it, but like no one kind of questioned it. Then when I was there on this central position, I had regular updates with the US team. And on one of these updates, I brought it up and I asked, like, do you guys think there is any chance for us to like change it? And the US team said, absolutely no. I mean, we are not using this program. It's probably impossible to use it here. So I gave up for a moment. But then by accident, I heard that another team in the US is using the same program as we do. So I again called our team and the change was done within like 2 months. And we suddenly didn't have to do a process that was being done for like years and years and years. I mean, at least 12 years when I was there. So it was a huge step forward on a very like stupid part of process, but it kind of made me realize, as one of many examples, that you always have to kind of still try, because there is no such thing as a real block unless we are talking about, legal stuff. So if a process is like this, it can always be challenged. And if it really makes sense, because it's like a huge time saving, and in this case, it's also then money saving, you can always try to find a solution to suggest it. But of course, again, as freelancers, we have to also be a little bit diplomatic about it. Number 5, plan for risk and mistakes. Of course, this is from our perspective as well, that we have to be very wise about how we work. We deal with clients' data, with budgets very often, with information that is shared on internal meetings, and we can't share it outside. This is something that we are all signing NDAs for, and this is number 1, that we have to just be very thoughtful about it, what we share on LinkedIn, etc. But the second part of this point is that when you are project managing, and especially if it's like a 360 campaign, 12 markets, huge volume, there is a lot of risks and mistakes that might happen in this process. So it's also something you have to plan within your timeline. And I think this is one of the basic things of project management, but I also kind of wanted to put it there because especially as freelancers, we will not be so easily forgiven as employees, especially on our first project. So this is very important to kind of plan ahead for this. And the less you know the vendors you will be working with, the more you have to plan for that, because you just simply don't know who you're dealing with yet. Then a little bit about dealing with hardcore clients or vendors. So it happens sometimes, and there is a lot of discussion also on LinkedIn about like red flags in clients' requests, bad briefings. The worst of all is, of course, if there is like a bad briefing and then people work on something and then the client cancels the project and doesn't pay anyone. So it's often unfortunately, about a little bit about intuition, but also a little bit about our planning and contracts. It's very good to plan the contract after you accepted the job, so that it doesn't wait for forever for after the project, etc. If it's your new client and the project is seems to be like a long-term one, it's also good to plan some prepayments, even after, let's say, I don't know, 2 weeks, the first prepayment, and then maybe middle of the project, and then end of the project. This is just something to secure your situation a little bit. Unfortunately, sometimes we can't really predict that something like this will happen. So the thing we can do is definitely, if you deal with something like this, you can also give this information to your fellow freelancers so that people are aware. And even if there is like a chance to share an opinion about it, it's really something that people use. Like, we all check when we are approached by a new client, we all check opinions about them and see if there is any red flag that we might be dealing with. For me, this is something I also already mentioned before. A bad briefing is not yet a red flag. It's rather something that I believe people hire us for because they are not able to communicate well in their briefing. But it might also be that it's just a bad client. So this is something you have to check. And if you feel like the client is not only just unorganized or maybe undecisive, but actually is abusive, then you have to leave. I mean, unfortunately, this is much higher stake. This is about your mental health, and this is about your well-being, and also simply not allowing yourself to burn out because of something like that, because this would mean that you're also not gonna get other jobs and clients, because you will be in a position of very depressed and burned out. So you have to be the best boss for yourself and think about it like as if you were hiring someone else, if you would allow some client to treat them badly. So be very, very conscious about it. And product managers are the closest collaborators of companies that are really, like, this relationship is really based on trust, because with all other types of external vendors, there is always this kind of margin of maybe they will be a little bit late, maybe they will not answer something. Project manager is not treated like this. We are supposed to be the holding point, the glue between external and internal, between feedback givers and final producers. And we can't be people who are not answering on time or who are not trustworthy, making a mess in papers and stuff like this. So this trust is something that will hopefully maintain your gigs with certain client. And I really think that if you like meet a client that is like a really good client and you want to work with them, if you manage to maintain this trust, it will be a very long-term relationship. Does anyone have any questions so far? Okay, moving forward. So a little bit more talking, but not so much, don't worry. So some good practices, I will try to go through it a little bit faster. So first, keep your finances and your client's finances in order. This is very important. This is the boring part of our work, but if this is not in order, it can destroy a lot. And the first point I would say is very important, because this is about your company, your finances, your letter from, I don't know how to say it in English, the Finanzamt, the finance office. It has to be in order. Like, you have to make sure that you're not having issues with taxes. So this is really number one, because if your company situation is unstable, it will affect your work as well. So take care of this, definitely. Keep reviewing and improving. So stay on top of creative tech. This is something I believe I already covered, because we have to constantly check what's going on out there. How are other companies working? We have to learn from better companies. And also right now with the development of AI, of course, we have to also check how far it went. Is it already helpful for us? Is it not? And where it could be useful. Be kind, which I already said before as well. Super important, I think, and especially for project managers. Like if you feel like you can't really talk with someone because they are getting on your nerves, I mean, it might also be just like a really bad fit, but it's something that we have to work on a little bit and be patient and be understanding. We are working with so many different characters. This is incredible right now with the very international structures and different work cultures. So this is very, very important. Stick to the workflow and break the rules, which basically means that you're supposed to help establish the workflow sometimes. Sometimes you're already coming to something that is ready and you have to just follow the rules. And when you are extremely fluent in this structure and workflow, this is a moment when you can also sometimes break the rules, because you know sort of how far this string can go back and forth. And this is something that should be, of course, not a rule on every single asset and delivery, but it's rather that if you have a big project, you are also this decision maker that has to prioritize, is this already a moment when we have to deliver without additional approval or not, etc. So this is our moment when we are also breaking the rules sometimes a little bit, but only based on our deep experience and proficiency. So it's how I was always also working, and I believe the decision-making feature is something that is very, very valued among especially like marketing teams. Proactively communicate timelines if the client keeps forgetting. So this is something that I come across a lot. Very often in the beginning of the project, we know what the timeline is and everybody knows about it. But the deeper we get into it, higher management of companies tend to prolong the approval processes because they still kind of want to rediscuss it, redesign it, check new mock-ups, and rediscuss it again, then sleep over it, then rediscuss it. And there comes a moment when it looks like we still have a lot of time, but the production time is already squeezed to minimum. So this is a moment when the project manager has to not just be, you know, a fly on the wall sitting and listening, but actually say like, listen, guys, we are now risking delays. So this means we will probably have to spend more money because we will have to pay for overnight work or something like that. And this is then the decision of the client if they want to risk it or not. But you have to be the person who is holding this kind of like guard on the timeline. The next point is very important for me. So if you manage external team, do everything you can so that their payments are done on time. I was working for companies that pay. And I was very lucky. I never had a situation that the client didn't pay me after the work. But of course, it happens that sometimes these payments are delayed and delayed and delayed. And you can see that employees are trying to do everything they can, but it's still not coming for weeks or weeks. And no one likes it, obviously. Like this is the worst that a company can do for an external vendor, is to keep them waiting and not even like write an explanation. If you as an external partner are managing the budget and you're supposed to kind of manage the payments, or at least manage them communicating with internal finances, sometimes you have to like be there every day. And I don't mean like physically, but maybe send an email or call just to make sure that you understand what is exactly happening, why is there a delay, and then give this information to the vendor and make sure that they know that it's coming, that it's not, that they are not being forgotten or anything like this. Like, honestly, we are all freelancers and we know how hard it is if we don't get money for a few months because the company is not ready to pay, but we have to maintain our life and of course, pay the rent. So this is a huge priority. Expand your network. So this is a little bit different than just networking itself. It's about not going in circles, working constantly with the same group of people. It is something I see a lot, that people who, for example, met during studies in some kind of media schools, they tend to work together for many years later, have the same clients, and it is fun. It is definitely very nice to work together, and I don't say you shouldn't do it, but you should also try working with new professionals. It's extremely developing. It's a chance to exchange ideas, to learn, and simply also to have a bigger network just by work. So it's, you're not getting out of your comfort zone because you're not just meeting someone randomly. Like, you maybe hire someone or even recruit them for a project, and you can test more and more professionals from your industry. This is very, very important. So always try to do it. Don't stick always to the same group. And then finally, finish the project like a pro. Creative previews in order. So what I want to say is that when we finish a big project after a few months, sometimes our situation is that we have to leave from one day to another, because this is simply a certain timeline we are paid for, and maybe the project is not even completely finished yet, but someone else will finish it. So try to always, as a kind of good habit, try to always finish your last day with everything as perfect as it could be. If you work using project management tools, upload all the previews of the files you were producing with the agency or designers. Make sure that all the names are correct, that the deliveries are done to the correct places, that there is a total order in the budgets. Basically, leave the room in a way that someone who has to take over or maybe look at this project later understands everything that is happening there and understands where to look for stuff. If you leave a little bit of mess, it will be the impression you leave behind. So even if it's not your fault, you are the project manager, and this is something that is really leaving the last impression. So be a pro in this last moment, even if you're very tired. Now, moving to a topic that is very interesting for everyone. I know it's already late, so I will try to make it fast. This is something I also wrote about already a few times on LinkedIn, some kind of overviews. And I want to say that this is actually not even my original list or idea. When I decided to set up my own company, I went to this official German business school for 2 months. They prepare you for setting up your business in Germany, so you learn everything about local taxes and what kind of different forms you have to fill out, etc. And they gave us this kind of overview. And for me, as this was one of my biggest fears, was first of all, how do I manage my own finances efficiently, but also how do I even set up my first rate? This was extremely helpful, so I'm very happy to always share it with everyone. And I basically just divided it into these 5 points. Check market rates. This is something you can always do easy. LinkedIn, Google, any other work-related tools. There are always some kind of analytics for your market and for your industry. If your position is extremely original and niche, then of course you use it just for comparison, and you know that it's, let's say, I don't know, between 300 and 1,000 per day. And so if your niche is extremely high, very senior and very detailed work, then maybe it's a higher rate. If it's a very junior one, then maybe it's a lower rate, but it's something that you can already compare to. Then you have to prepare your personal and work-related financial needs and availability to work. This point is the biggest of these. It takes the most time, I would say, at least 30 minutes. You have to basically write down your monthly costs. What are you spending on your on your rent, what is your, I don't know, media cost, how much do you spend on clothes, food, etc., etc., and also what will be your work-related financial needs. In my case, I rent all my software and hardware. So I have stable monthly costs, and this is what I obviously put in my monthly overview for my accountant as well as my costs. And finally, the availability to work, which is related to how much time can you work in a week or a month, because maybe you are taking care of your family, or maybe you want to study on top, or maybe simply after leaving a stable post, you want to work only half time. Considering this, if you can work 4 hours a day, your rate, of course, has to be a little bit higher if you want to maintain your living standard. So you have to also think about it. Then you have to kind of judge, which is hard, but you have to judge your own seniority and also project complexity. But this is already on top of your financial needs, because no matter if you're junior or senior, your financial needs has to be met first. And I mean the very basic ones. You have to be able to pay for your rent and to pay for your food within the time that you plan to work. And of course, being realistic that you might not always get as much work as you need. So in some months, it might be just a little bit less. Adding to all these, let's say, costs, your local taxes percentage. For example, in Germany, taxes are from, I think, 19 to 32% or 34%, the income tax. And this is the amount you have to sort of add on top of this yearly overview. And just for the sake of your overview, always add the highest tax. Like, we aim high, we want to make money. So let's say that you will be paying the highest taxes, which means that you have to make this much money in order to still maintain your financial situation. And the last thing you have to add is savings. The moment you start working as a freelancer, but also when you're employed, if it's possible, try to save at least a little bit of money. If you're having a really good month, try to save more. This is our security for all these times when we don't have jobs, of course, but also simply something that you can then use if you go for holidays or something like this. But the more you save, the better. I mean, especially looking at the crisis in the market right now, it's hard to imagine that we will be safe for, let's say, like 2 years. But at least if you can make savings for 6-7 months, that is definitely gonna give you a little bit of like calmness when dealing with the crisis. So this whole overview is something that you have to make based on your monthly situation, but for the whole year, because some costs are, of course, made only once a year, like, I don't know, car tax or some kind of mortgage tax, I don't know, whatever it is that you are dealing with. So you have to have like a full year situation, and then you can also see that on average, this is how much you should be making. Okay, moving forward. So my last point is about being your best supporter, your carer. And this is a huge topic itself, of course. So I know I'm not a psychologist, I'm not an expert on this. And I'm also not a very, like, maybe not a very, like, what to say that, I lost the word, but in any case, I want to say that I'm not believing in a lot of like spiritual things, but I know that if we are dealing with like hardcore burnout, and if this situation is going on for a very long time, it's going to be very hard for us to also just work. So this is something that we have to try to keep up with ourselves. And my first advice is get inspired by your heroes. And I mean here our local heroes, like our parents, maybe our siblings, maybe our friends. really look up to someone who is maybe dealing with a similar challenges that you are. Maybe someone from your family has always been self-employed and they maintained a good life and like good relationship with themselves, and they are satisfied with their work. Maybe some of your friends are doing something on their own and they are succeeding in their own way. And I don't really mean financially, I rather mean like having a satisfaction and fulfillment from this work. This is something that keeps us really, like it really helps us to maintain in our position when stuff gets hard, or when we are starting to doubt a little bit. The second thing is find a support buddy. And it sounds a little bit like a therapy, but I actually don't really mean a serious shoulder to cry situation. I rather mean someone that you can laugh about it with. And for me, this has always been the case. I always had someone at work with whom we were on WhatsApp, always kind of laughing off all the stress and trying to find like a good balance in the whole situation when it was not easy, when it was very hard to understand why stuff is happening. And it helped me so much. It was really like when you feel like you're boiling like water, then suddenly all this steam is gone and you can laugh about it and just like send each other some gifts and just go on with your life, and it suddenly doesn't feel like such a heavy situation anymore. I think it's such a huge support, really. So I also really recommend it to everyone. If it's not someone from your work or area, it can also just be like a friend or someone from your family. Do invest in additional business-related trainings, but also as a freelancer, you're your own boss. So it's great if you do find time for your hobbies and stuff that you didn't have time to do when you were working. Whatever it might be, ceramics, drums, I don't know, even like running or something like this. But of course, if you feel like this is your time to like grow business-wise, it's great to also look for some conferences, for some media-related events, and just go there even on your own. Don't force yourself to network, but just be there, participate, see what's up, get inspired, and it might be that you still do connect with someone, it might not be, but it always is a very enriching situation, even if it's really bad. And then it's also enriching that you know that it's not something you want to do, so you might choose something else in the future. Listen to your body, 100%. The closer you are to yourself regarding like how tired and burned out you are, the more you will be able to kind of fight it and help yourself, which means even like sometimes taking a break during the day and taking a walk, but also saying no to another big project when you are already on one. Even if time-wise it seems like you can do it, if you feel immediately tired and burned out just thinking about it, you might actually end up in a horrible procrastination mode, and you might end up not doing neither of the projects. So you have to judge it yourself. I don't know what is your experiences, guys, with like working in companies and burnouts, but I think most of us went through something like this, and maybe some of us are still dealing with that. And I know procrastination very well. I know burnout procrastination, and right now, as my own boss, I'm very careful about it. So I work very hard and I work a lot, but I also take breaks. I go for a walk with my dog. I'm trying not to be on the computer in the evening and not like early morning. And I'm kind of trying to keep this discipline a little bit of also having this, clean time without any work. And following this, do not say no to your family, friends, animal friends, and take holidays. If your dog is coming to you after you're sitting on your computer for like 6 hours, this is a moment when you should pet your dog and like have some nice time with them, and not just look back at the keyboard, like the keyboard can wait. And do spend some kind of like festivities in your country with your family, with your friends, because this is especially in a very busy period, this is the only moment from this year you will actually remember. So it's very important to be with your close people. move your body 100%. I myself am a victim of not moving enough, and because of this I have horrible migraines and back pain. So I'm working on it myself, and it's very hard. Because you always feel like you just want to work if you have an opportunity. But this is also the advice that my doctor gave me, so I'm passing it on. Try to move your body, even when you're like working on your computer. Try to like, move a little bit, get up, do some push-ups or whatever you feel like. This is about our health, so do it. Very last thing, there is no one recipe for success, so we try hard and we might fail. And this fail might also just be a different situation that we didn't expect. And it's also worth to kind of look at it, not give up based on this feeling that it's not what we wanted. Before I was working for MTV, my huge life plan was that I would be studying in Paris. And I went through all the exams to the film academy there, and I failed on the very last one. And to be honest, I thought it's the end. For me, I thought like, oh, I don't have any other plan. This was literally the only thing I wanted to do then. I didn't have anything else planned. I was sure I'm gonna get in. And for a month, I was not doing anything. I was just really depressed and gave up. And after this month, MTV called me about an application that I sent half a year before. And they asked me to come for an interview for a different position. And I went there feeling completely indifferent. And I was feeling like, okay, whatever, like, let's see. And this was a great interview. And I got a job that really opened the door to a completely new universe for me, including moving to a different country, etc. So after a huge fail, which was probably like the biggest fail of my adult life, something completely new came that appears to be incredible for me. So it's not always like this. Sometimes we just fail, but try to kind of see that this is the whole process. Like, there is no opening and closing in life. This is all just going on, and it might be that something completely different will come after a big fail. That's all from my side, and I wonder if there are any questions or comments, or do you want to grill me about something?
Thank you, Ada. Thank you so much. Please feel free to unmute if you would like to ask Ada a question, or you can also type the question in the chat.
Thank you so much, Ada. That was really helpful. I'm actually really interested in you mentioned that you will sometimes mock stuff up for clients, like before you take it to your creative team. And to be honest, when you said that, I was like, I don't think I've ever worked with a creative that would be happy for me to do that. Like, I think they would just be like, what on earth are you doing? So how did you like come to that?
Of course.
Like, solution, and do you speak to them?
That's a great question, and I definitely I have had a situation that was actually not based on a mock-up, but I had a situation when once I had a little bit of a clash with a creative director back in the days, because he thought I'm kind of stepping into his field, but it was a misunderstanding. I didn't. But I remember that back then he wrote me that I should know that I am a project manager and that he's a creative director. And of course, even though it was a misunderstanding, and after this he apologized, it's stuck in my head that especially creatives are very sensitive. But my talent is that I'm a very bad designer. So no one would think that I'm trying to take their jobs, because it's just really not looking good. And I'm definitely much better of an editor, but even on this, I don't try to make the edit look good. I'm honestly, sometimes these mock-ups are not necessarily about re-editing the whole thing, because if the feedback is so extent, I would just send it to the editor. Yeah. But I will give you a real example that happened. So basically, we were asked to prepare a new show reel for a client, and Timeline was crazy. We knew that we will probably not be able to do it on time with such a long edit. So an employee, also the project manager, internal project manager, suggested that we would use existing reels and put them together. And then someone from marketing was like, okay, so maybe between these reels we can put the logo or something like that. And or something else, I don't remember, and I didn't think it was a good idea. So before I actually briefed the editor that we would be waiting for a few hours for their answer, I just took both of these files, I put the logo in between them, I sent it as this like low-res draft to the marketing. I was like, do you think this looks good? I don't think so, it doesn't have the flow, etc. They were like, oh yeah, you're absolutely right, let's not do it. So it saves us a lot of back and forth. And it's rather something like this that the more messy the briefing is, the more it's helpful sometimes to make a mock-up and honestly just put text on the footage saying like, this has to be changed, this shorter, this is too yellow, la la la. And it's like an additional briefing. And when it comes to design, I rarely do it because, again, I'm a horrible designer. I really don't have any talent in that. So I'm technically able to do it, but I just don't do it well. So I would rather just do like a really quick mock-up that, for example, if we are changing out-of-home design, I would move stuff around so people can see what it means, because sometimes you really get this feedback of like, can you move it 5 pixels to the left? Which is such a time waste to go back and forth. So I will just do it myself. And then I would be like, is this what you mean? And they are like, yes. And I was like, okay, then I'm briefing it to the designer so that they do a final file. I do it a lot. And for me, because I'm, as you see, a little bit like fast and I am patient, but not so much, it's just a time-saving situation.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Or comments? Maybe someone doesn't agree with me on something. Should I call out people? No, I'm not going to do it.
I think it just means that you covered absolutely everything, which is also great news.
Or everyone fell asleep. Yeah, great. So if there are no further questions, thank you so much, Andy, as well. Thank you so much, guys, for finding time in our busy life. And I wish you all that there is no crisis on your market, that you have great clients, and yeah, try to go with this networking exchange, moving immediately. Like, this is honestly the best thing to do right now. And if you have any additional questions later, I'm available on Juno Slack as well, or on LinkedIn, wherever you can find me. So it was a big pleasure. Thank you very much. And thank you, Eva, so much for organizing.
Thank you. It's a pleasure it's always a pleasure to host a very entertaining talk. Have a lovely afternoon and hope to speak to you soon.